You know, when I look around at all the entrepreneurs who are grinding it out, spending 70 to 80 hours per week growing their business, you have to ask yourself the question, at what cost? Hi, my name's Tim Uchuk, and in this podcast, we're going to be exploring the tools, tactics, and strategies for crushing it and scaling your business without making the ultimate sacrifice of your time and freedom. Hey, what's up, guys? Tim Uchuk here. It is Monday at the time of this recording, and I'm just out and about picking up a piece for our boat. We actually went boating yesterday, and it's funny because we picked up this used boat, nice little boat for the ocean, take our kids out a couple months ago, and we've used it once. Now, one of the first challenges for us was my wife has a minivan and I drive a little Model 3 Tesla, and neither of those could tow our boat. So that's one of the excuses. So ended up having to trade in my wife's Odyssey for a Ford Expedition, so we can actually tow our boat now. And yesterday we woke up and we were about to make some excuses, but then I thought about, and this is why I posted, by the way, on Facebook earlier this weekend. I put experiences are greater than things. Do you agree? And this is where that thinking came from because I was always kind of challenging myself to put myself in the position of my kids and fast forward the clock, 10, 15, 20 years. And, me looking back, my kids looking back and saying, you know what, we had just the greatest childhood. We had such great experiences growing up and memories. And that's the gift that I want to give. And so I'm always mindful of that. I call it future coffee, where I think about some point in time in the future and looking back, and would I be happy with that progress, and would I be proud of it? And that's one of the biggest things is impact with our kids. And so that's what the boat represents, is the experiences um, that we're wanting to accumulate. So my rule going forward is if it is a weekend and if it is nice outside, we will take that boat out. If we're in town for the rest of the summer, because we had an awesome time yesterday. We went island hopping here on Vancouver Island. We saw a couple cool spots with resorts that were just like 30 minutes off the coast of the island, and we picked out clams, and we went fishing for prawns. We dropped prawn traps, so really cool experience. So anyways, I'm picking up an accessory to flush the salt water out of our boat, long story short. And I wanted to hop on here and talk to you about two critical ingredients for sustained success, or for long-term success in anything. And oddly enough, the acronym for these two ingredients is BS, but it doesn't stand for what you might be thinking. It actually stands for build and sustain. And I learned this trick going back in my manufacturing roots, because when you are, in any business, especially when you're scaling or growing it, habits and predictability and repeatability is everything, right? I've said many times, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And the pattern of scale and nature is just that, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. You look at cells repeating, you look at flowers, you look at trees. They follow that fractal pattern where it's a self-repeating pattern over and over and over and over again. And if it's different, that's a mutation, in which case the scaling will not be effective. And so the same thing is true in our business. We want the rule to be how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so getting back to the two critical ingredients, in my manufacturing days, when you want to improve efficiency, eliminate waste, and again, this is applied, this is just as relevant in whatever business you are in. Waste is essentially anytime you have a question, anytime you are at a standstill, so you're roadblocked. Anytime your team is, in manufacturing, we used to draw these spaghetti diagrams where we would map out people walking across the shop looking for tools, or looking to ask questions. We want to eliminate all of those inefficiencies and just eliminate redundancies, another form of waste, right? Anything that you're doing more than once that is unnecessary, eliminate it. Anything that can be automated, right? So we want to eliminate all of the unnecessary wasteful actions, right? So that is kind of the background around when you're optimizing an area throughout the business, throughout the manufacturing production line. And so when it comes to the acronym Build and Sustain, the first part to, if you're documenting a process, for example, if you're onboarding a new team member, for example, and let's use that example actually. Let's say you onboarded a new sales rep within your business. So when you're onboarding them, you're getting them set up for success. You're getting them used to your company, your all of your policies, all of your how-tos, your procedures, and that's great to give them the knowledge that one time. But that's the building, right? The sustaining is arguably the most, I think, underutilized piece, which is, are we actually complying? If I were to check in a month later or 90 days down the road, are they actually compliant to the policies, to the procedures, to the targets, to those key results, right? Are they actually compliant? Um, Another example would be if you organize your garage in the spring, right? You do your spring cleaning. That is the building, right? You build by creating the environment that you want. Now you have to sustain it. That means every day or every week, putting practices in place to maintain and sustain the desirable result, the environment that you want to have in place, right? So sustaining it is by far the hardest piece here. And so in throughout our business, and whenever I come across a problem with other businesses, I'm looking at, okay, they generated the SOP binder, all of the procedures, great, they got them documented, but are they actually sustainable? Meaning, are the team members actually following them? And that is the sustain piece, and that's where we just bolt on this principle that is what gets measured improves, and what gets measured and reported improves exponentially. The greatest example of that is a digital speed sign. So if you're driving and you see the sign that says 60, and then above it you see this flashing 78, which is your behavior will change, right? So when it comes to sustaining these environments, and again, it could be adherence to processes. And so I'll give you some concrete examples here. Let's say that your sales team, you want them to update their pipeline once per week. Well, you would measure that, and you would have something that I call standard work in place where, each week you are having them go through a series of checks, which say, are your pipeline stages up to date? Are all your meeting notes caught up? Are all your activities caught up? So you don't have a bunch of overdue stuff. You don't have a bunch of um, deals in your pipeline that are out of date or inaccurate, right? So that is the sustaining piece. Um, if you look at the sustaining when it comes to targets, measurables, actually putting the target in front of your team each week and putting the actual, so the target or the plan versus the actual, and they can see it. Typically, we'll use like green, yellow, red. And by using this principle, right, this is a timeless principle, and there are so many different ways that you can execute it. I like to often use like dials or gauges, green, yellow, red. And anytime I want to change a behavior, that's what I do. I measure and report, and this is how we sustain it. Same throughout my manufacturing facility, where we want to keep an organized shop. We have an audit, right? We have an audit, which is a series of questions or checks, and we measure by in terms of against the standards in each of the areas, and we run a quick audit. So that's measuring and reporting, and what happens? We're able to sustain the organization um, at the level that we want it to be at, right? So what are we talking about here? We talked about the two ingredients for long-term success, which are BS, which are build and sustain. So the first thing is you got to build it, and then you got to sustain it is step two, right? So your processes, how you do things, your standards in your company. Just documenting them alone is not enough. You need to sustain the environment that you want. To do that, you just measure against your standards, right? What does success look like? Another example for you is let's say people aren't let's say you're using a software and people aren't filling out the fields on a regular basis. Or let's say that you have a form that you want your team to fill out, and that's not happening on a regular basis. Well, really simply, you would have a conversation with your team to fix this, have a conversation with your team, and then start measuring either the percentage of it being filled out, so the target is 100% filled out, right? And then you measure the actual. Or you measure mistakes caught on like a weekly basis. And you can do this with a pen and paper. You can do it digitally. The important thing is that you're measuring and reporting with your team, or you're saying, this is what we want. Here's why, like tie it to the purpose, right? When we don't fill this thing out correctly, our customers are going to suffer because we're not able to manage the projects, right? What is the why behind it? And then measure it. So every time you find one of your forms or applications, anything like that, anything that you have to fill out within your company, when you catch that it was not done correctly, or when you catch it not being filled out all the way, just measure it. So it could be, the target is zero mistakes caught, and then the actual each week, you might start out by catching, 8. You review that with the team and say, guys, let's do a root cause analysis. Do you need training? How can we get this number from 8 down to 0? Help me help you. And then you measure it the next week, and then the next week, and you keep doing a root cause analysis behind it. And it's really simple, and what I'm sharing with you can be applied in any facet of your business where you want to raise the bar, increase your standards, incorporate measuring and reporting, right? So you build, okay, here's the system or the process or the condition that we want to have in place. Now we got to sustain it. So we're going to measure and report against that, and be really clear where our standards are, so that we can, without standards, you have no basis for improvement, right? That watermark. Speaking of watermarks, I am at the boat shop here now, and I'm going to pick that thing up. But hope that was useful. BS, the 2 ingredients for sustained success, long-term success, is building and sustaining. So I hope that was helpful, and I will touch base with you guys soon. Hey, Tim Uchuk here, and real quick, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, if you could take a couple quick seconds to give it a rating, it would be very much appreciated. And secondly, if you're looking for more tools and strategies on how you can crush it in life and business, just head on over to bookwithtim.com, where I've put together a free case study which shows you how to unlock unprecedented freedom today by using the 2 power levers. Just head on over to bookwithtim.com. Until next time, wishing you success and freedom in your business. Cheers.